And we've all had those sudden unexplained waves of fatigue, even if we've gotten an adequate amount of sleep. We have Dr. Justin Puckett here to help us learn why that happens. How are you doing this morning?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. I've heard that, thyroid is contributed to this, and can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, thyroid is one of the more common causes of fatigue. It's certainly something that gets a lot of buzz and that we talk about a lot. And so for viewers that don't know, thyroid is located right on top of your windpipe, just below your voice box.
So like right around here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's a kind of a butterfly-shaped organ. It's small. Its role is to not only produce the thyroid hormone, but also to store it.
Okay.
And it receives signals from a gauge in our brain that helps tell us to make thyroid hormone. And thyroid hormone is utilized in our body for lots of different things, but we typically feel it if we're low in thyroid hormone with things like fatigue and brittle nails and hair. Sometimes we even notice a thick tongue or some thick eyelids. Those are kind of some of the common presenting symptoms with hypothyroidism.
Okay, so that means you're just not making enough of the thyroid hormone, hypothyroidism?
Exactly. We all have a set point where our body likes to run, and sometimes for a variety of reasons, the most common of which is something called Hashimoto's disease, where your body actually develops antibodies and kind of fights itself and hurts itself and destroys your thyroid. And so whenever that happens, the thyroid quits making the hormone in the same amount that it used to, and so then you become in this state of hypothyroidism.
Interesting. So what does the hyperthyroid do?
Well, whenever you're low in the thyroid, it controls a variety of processes. It controls our metabolism. It controls our temperature control, even the way our skin and hair grows. So whenever it drops low, a lot of those things, we become more sluggish. Sometimes our mood drops. Sometimes we just don't feel right. We don't feel normal. And so those are all reasons, that why someone's doctor might order a test to evaluate for thyroid disease.
Okay, and who is likely to get this?
Well, anyone can get this. Most commonly it occurs between the ages of 40 and 60, more commonly in women. About 5% of the population overall will have thyroidism, or what we call subclinical hypothyroid.
Okay.
And so 5% of those groups. We also see it in about 1 in 4,000 newborns will actually have what we call congenital hypothyroidism, which is something very important. It's rare, but it's important, and we actually test for that in the tests in that state screen whenever the baby gets their foot poked, and we send that off to the state lab. It's one of several things that are tested now. And then, like I said, the autoimmune is another is the most common cause.
And what happens if this isn't treated?
If this isn't treated, it can not only slow your metabolism, cause weight gain, cause mood disorders, really affect your productivity and your ability to function. But in the severest cases, there's actually a type of coma that occurs that can be life-threatening. Okay,
interesting. So what causes this? Is it normal that when this happens, when you feel kind of tired and sluggish at times?
Well, of course, we can be tired and sluggish for one of a million reasons, of insomnia and mood disorders, and thyroid disorders is just one of those. So I think whenever you're talking to your doctor, if you have a group of symptoms that the doctor's suspicious for, and fatigue and weight gain or inability to lose weight kind of fold into that picture, maybe even you've noticed that your nails are a little more brittle, and then in those instances, that's the ideal person to maybe check some lab work and see where we're at.
Okay, so those are some of the so how do you, when you have a patient come in, how do you know if they have this? What are some of the symptoms?
Yeah, it's a blood draw. We just draw blood. We check for a TSH and a T4, which is the T4 is kind of the active form. The TSH is the part from the brain sending down to the thyroid to say make more, and from there we get those results back, and if we make the diagnosis of, it's kind of your TSH, that gauge number goes up as you're low on thyroid, and then obviously the thyroid hormone, the T4, goes down. And so as we see one of those two things happening, I mentioned earlier, subclinical hypothyroid is whenever your T4 stays about the same, but whenever your TSH starts to rise.
Interesting. So you're saying like weight gain is one of the symptoms. So even if you're eating healthy, you have a healthy diet, is it kind of inevitable that you will gain weight?
Yeah, and I think that it's one of those things that's going to feed in. So if you're hypothyroid and having problems, even if you're eating a correct number of calories, if you calculate out what you need. And so for people who in my office are working on their weight, thyroid is something that we immediately rule out from the very get-go, because if there's a subclinical hypothyroid picture there, even that maybe they feel energetic okay and their mood's okay and we don't notice any of those physical exam findings, but if they're a little subclinical hypothyroid, you want to make sure that we get that treated so that metabolism can move on.
Interesting. So should everyone be tested for this?
It's not something that we should broad spectrum test, and many of us feel fatigued. It first should start with a conversation with your provider in the doctor's office. And if that discussion leads down the road and the doctor can't find some other common reason for your group of symptoms that we've just discussed, then doing some blood work is a simple and easy and a fairly routine process to get this condition ruled out.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I know this is an issue, like a lot of people have questions about. I do personally as well. We'll put more information on heartlandconnection.com. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.